All right, so this is a little recap, breakdown, prediction thing for Yellowjackets Season 2, Episode 5. So, first off, I'm just going to kind of go over some general thoughts I have that I wrote down last week, but didn't include in last week's episode about Yellowjackets. So, this season at least, I don't like the 2021 timeline nearly as much as the 90s timeline. The characters in the 2021 timeline are kind of unlikable this season. Ty keeps on not getting help. Shawna keeps on involving her daughter, and Jeff's the only one who I feel like I really identify with that much. And in the 2021 timeline, some of it seems somewhat random what they include and what they don't include. I wrote that down last week. I did think that this new episode is a lot better about that kind of stuff. But a lot of characters in the 2021 timeline are kind of unlikable and crazy, and they seem kind of stupid. Besides Misty, Misty seems to be the only one who has a handle on what's going on. Overall, I just don't like this season quite as much as the first season. The season 2, episode 5 episode, I really enjoyed, but before that, I wasn't a big fan. So this is more from last week, but the show does seem to be positioning Ty as a sort of complement to or rival to Lottie's supernatural abilities. I think that plotline could lead to Ty and not Lottie being the antler queen, and then like basically the leader of the group. Ty does seem super reluctant about that, and you would think you would have to involve conscious Ty at least somewhat instead of dark Ty. But I could see her eventually start embracing her powers or whatever's going on with her, and partially through like Van encouraging her to. One thing I find interesting is it's not really clear why all the women stop talking to each other when they're back from the wilderness. They seem to kind of completely scatter and disassociate themselves from one another. It could be that they don't want to remind each other of the wilderness and everything that happened out there, but maybe they'll explain the schism between them all by the end of the show. This episode, it is mentioned that Ty and Van went to Shauna and Jeff's wedding together, so they at least kept in contact, and some people actually showed up to that wedding. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some type of late 90s reason for their fallout. So now I'm just going to get into some observations I had from this episode. It looks like Van has an overdue rent bill that she just kind of throws away. Van seems kind of stuck in the 90s with all the VHSs and the kind of grunge rock energy she has. I did find Ty passing out right when she makes eye contact with Van to be a bit melodramatic. Some of the cuts in the title, like the opening montage thing, it seems to kind of relate people cutting themselves to spreading jam on bread or a cracker with all these like quick stylized cuts in the montage. Kind of reminded me of Shaun of the Dead a little bit. Teen Shauna seems like none of the passive aggressive sass. It seems like she doesn't have any of the passive aggressive sass that her adult counterpart has. Shauna's kind of always in a bad mood. I mean, she's pregnant, but she's kind of always in a bad mood. She doesn't seem to ever try to make jokes or anything like her adult counterpart was. It's kind of a weakness in the writing, I'd say. The phrase happy wife, happy life is such a 90s type phrase, although I've heard people say that more recently. Whenever they're doing the meditation circle, it kind of seems like they're doing Mad Libs. That's kind of how Aquila seems to treat it. Them saying all that stuff, I found it to be kind of word salad-ish. It reminded me of how I respond to whenever like sommeliers lead wine tastings and they're asking you all these questions. I often have no idea what to say back to sommeliers, so it's just kind of word salad. The bowling scene, it seems super 90s. I kind of forgot that we weren't in the 90s in that scene with Jay and Callie bowling. It's like a 90s John Hughes 80s movie. It's like a John Hughes movie set in the 90s. So Jay's last name reminded me of Syracuse, which is a city in upstate New York. Jay talking about that. I mean, he says the Cuse is on the loose late in the episode. I think that's maybe where they got the inspiration for his name, which would then make him Italian. So Aquila's mouse is totally going to die. There's no way that little mouse survives the rest of the season. Hopefully nobody like swallows it whole while it's alive or something. I don't know. Using tape in the 2020s is so hipster. I used to live in Central Texas, and I definitely knew some people who still relied on VHS tapes. Super hipstery. Elijah Wood is really corny, and he does seem kind of possibly demented this episode. Him not sticking to the rules of two truths and a lie, I could definitely see that pissing off Misty, and it does seem to piss her off that he's not following the rules. Because although Misty seems to think that the rules don't apply to her, she does seem to like it when other people follow the rules. Them turning around that quick in the street and cutting people off, that's how you get killed in a car. Of course they survive, but that's not a super good move to make. So I did. This is kind of an episode two too late, but Lottie's compound brings up bees and they sell honey, so it's kind of weird that their symbol on their gate is a Yellowjacket, since Yellowjackets kill bees. Shawna and Jeff's reaction to Callie sharing that she opened up to a cop about Shawna's affair. It was surprisingly sane right up until Shawna encourages Callie to stay in contact with the cop and kind of lead him on. And they decide to kind of mess with the cop's head. That doesn't seem to be the best idea, to involve Callie in even more criminal stuff. Shawna fucking Randy has never been a believable lie, in my opinion. Maybe I get too much into this kind of stuff with who's too attractive for who and that kind of stuff, but it didn't. Shawna lying about that didn't work with Jackie in the 90s whenever she has to lie about who got her pregnant. You would think that Shawna would stop going to that well and would try to discourage rather than encourage that kind of rumor about her and Randy. We finally see adult Natalie wearing different clothes, so she's finally not wearing the same outfit for days on end. Teenage Travis and teenage Natalie's fight is like something from a soap opera. It's like that little subplot seemed like a and this whole show kind of seems like a more modern version of Twin Peaks. Not really Twin Peaks The Return, but the first two seasons of Twin Peaks and Fire Walk with Me. Adult Natalie saying, I'm not being held against my will, ... anymore, is pretty funny, the anymore part. She seems legitimately mad at Misty for kind of cramping her style, and it seems like Natalie's kind of on chasing Lottie, and she doesn't want any help. Natalie seems to reveal that she has ulterior motives to being around Lottie to Misty. If Natalie is just kind of thinking that Lottie's so great and that the compound's so great, then you would think that she would want Misty to join her if she really believed in that kind of stuff. But Walter being called a Hardy Boy by Natalie is really appropriate, and it's maybe a bit too spot on, a little bit too on the nose, unless Natalie has insider information on Walter, which I doubt, or if she just knows how much time Misty spends on the amateur detective stuff, which does seem to be that was a thing in season 1. I think that Misty revealed that to Natalie. It's a pretty, he does kind of look like a Hardy Boy, a little bit too put together, a little posh maybe, but I don't know. So it's ultra weird that Ty went on a road trip when the accident with her wife was more or less her fault. I can't imagine finding out that my partner went on a road trip to see their ex while I was unconscious, not in the hospital after an accident that the person who ran away to see their ex caused. That has to come back to bite Ty in the ass in some way. Teen Misty looks so fucking crazy when she overshares and basically kills Crystal/Kristen. That whole thing is pretty foreshadowed in a kind of Hitchcockian way. Alfred Hitchcock was a movie director in the early to mid 20th century. If you think about it, Crystal/Christian dies falling onto all of their shit. So her last moments would have been her falling onto a pile of shit, which is such a bad way to go. I actually enjoyed that character a fair amount, Crystal/Kristen. I thought she was a good character. She was kind of balance out Misty and make Misty less annoying. I did kind of question if that was Misty's first actual kill. It obviously wasn't her last kill or last murder, but I do wonder if she's done that type of thing before or not. Misty's always capable of self-justifying any of her bad decisions, though. I did write down that Elijah Wood's character Walter, he seems like he's risking his life. He doesn't even know it when he confronts Misty about Adam Martin. Um, you'd think that if you suspected somebody of being capable of killing a man, then you would think that he would be a little bit more on guard or a little bit more subtle. I doubt that can't be the last time we see that character, the Walter character. But he's probably going to take more of a back seat from now on. The detective's dialogue is kind of hard-boiled when they're sitting outside Shawna and Randy's hotel room. Randy is definitely the definition of a man-child. He's eager to please, and he's either stupid or goofy or both, which is man-child characteristics. Teenage Shawna looks and freaks out like a woman who carries all her belongings around in a stolen shopping cart. She looks utterly crazy. All of the characters, I think Crystal/Kristen, also look that way. The characters are looking increasingly dilapidated and crazy. I felt like Ty was being super invasive going through Van's medicine cabinet. I mean, maybe Van had some addiction issues when they were together or something, but that's just a bridge too far for me. I'm also not sure if Van is actually telling the truth about where that medicine came from. I could see her lying. But they do show her mom having struggled with at least alcohol abuse in the first season, Van's mom. The camera does seem to linger on the rifle in Lottie's closet. It seems rather ominous to me. That's when Natalie's looking through the closet trying to find dirt on Lottie. But it does seem like that rifle's going to come up again. It's not surprising in retrospect. It kind of surprised me in the moment a little bit, but you could tell they were kind of leading up to something like that, where Lottie's followers seem to know they're in a cult and just don't really care. To go back to the 90s timeline, I'm definitely on teen Shawna. I feel like she's right to feel like the others are kind of only encouraging Lottie's craziness, and that kind of stuff shouldn't be encouraged. I didn't really like that Misty made it down the cliff to Crystal/Kristen's body. There's not shown to be a path down, and if there was a path down, you'd think that Crystal would have hit it before hitting rock bottom. And her going down there and messing with the body doesn't really lead to anything interesting. It does kind of reveal that she doesn't like the song "Staying Alive" for a good reason. But if she went down there and got stuck down there or something, or if she was stuck outside during the storm, I could see that little plot line being worthwhile. I just didn't really find it super interesting. Whenever Jay says something about this doesn't feel right, it's such cliche dialogue among the two detectives. Speaking of Jay doesn't seem worried about legality or whether something is admissible at all. You'd think that his partner would do a better job of reining him in. Hobby's saying that he was told not to come back. People online were saying it was Dark Ty. I could see it being Misty. Or it could just be the last thing that Shawna said to him during Doom's Coming. Because she tells him to run. And that seems to be the last time we see Hobby for like a season. The team, I noticed that the team doesn't care about Kristen/Crystal disappearing at all besides Misty. They're all worried about Van and Ty. Or Shawna and Ty. So is where Van and Ty in the 2021 timeline, are they supposed to be with the others? Are they supposed to be with Lottie? Are they supposed to go back to the wilderness? It'd be super crazy if the adults go back to the wilderness, although I could see that happening. I did question whether drugs were involved in that whole Natalie reliving her ODing around Travis. It's a much more accurate portrayal of how drugs feel and how they affect the memory than other parts of the show. But it's obvious that Natalie and Travis's relationship helped enable Natalie and her addiction issues, and that the two of them are toxic and bad for each other. Some parts of her vision are reminiscent of some of the reveals from Lost. Bringing the wilderness and darkness back with them, I thought that might be about their trauma, or it may be a metaphor for their trauma. And the shadow of the Antler Queen coming off Lottie seems to foreshadow Lottie being the Antler Queen, but that not being a good thing. For some reason, maybe the power goes to her head. Maybe she feels like, in retrospect, she takes things too far. I did feel like this episode was a return to the highs of season one. I enjoyed this episode a lot. So now I'm gonna get into some predictions. So Teen Shawna is definitely going to be giving birth next episode. There looks like there's a lot of blood involved in that birth, so I doubt it's going to go well. Shauna's baby, I could see it being possessed or something, or them kind of messing with it being deformed or something like that. It does seem to look like we're going to get the whole gang back together back in Lottie's compound, perhaps as soon as next episode, where all the adult members of the team that are still alive and in the show, they'll all be shown together, which hasn't really happened too much. It happened like in 1 or 2 episodes in season 1, and then they expanded the cast. I think it may be a couple episodes before how Javi survived is actually revealed. I could see them kind of stretching that subplot out across multiple episodes until it's like the main focus of one of the episodes, maybe the penultimate episode of the season or the final episode of the season. It seemed like there are less and less holdouts when it comes to Team Lottie. There's not a lot of people shown hanging out in the cabin, so maybe they're off doing other stuff. But you would also think that Teen Shawna and Teen Natalie would band together more since they both don't like Lottie. Maybe that'll be shown more later as them getting closer. There wasn't as much about Coach Ben, in this episode. I don't think he's going to survive the whole second season, though. It also doesn't seem like Travis is going to be done being mad at Natalie anytime soon. The relationship is super like teenager and stuck and like they're all over the place with each other, super on and off. So any scenes between Jay and Callie will now be like a chess match, I'd say. I don't think Callie's going to end up winning these chess matches with Jay if she keeps on hanging out with him. I could see her cutting him out of his life, though. And it seems like Van and Ty may rejoin the rest at Lottie's compound. Like that's where Ty's going to drive them. I could see the adults going back to the wilderness in seasons 3 or 4. Not this season, but maybe in next season or the 4th season. There are supposedly going to be 5 seasons for this show total, which seems like it might be a bit much. But at least we're going to get a lot more Yellowjacket material. I could see Marie being Pit Girl. They kind of laid off the whole her being annoying subplot this episode, but I could definitely see her being Pit Girl. I did kind of question if the Pit Girl stuff in the first episode of the whole series, if that's like the climax of their time in the wilderness. It seems like it may be from their. It's kind of obvious that whole scene is from their second winter in the wilderness. I could see them explaining the whole Pit Girl Antler Queen thing before season 5, like maybe in the season 4 finale. I do feel like, it kind of scares me that maybe Dark Ty is going to drive Van and Dark Ty somewhere after the accident that Dark Ty and her wife got in. It seems like that's not super safe for Van to be Ty to be driving. I think there might be a week-long break in episodes. It might be 2 weeks before we get a new episode of Yellowjackets. I'm not 100% on that, but I've seen stuff about that online. And I've already kind of gotten into this, but I do think that the line of dialogue that Javi is referring to when his friend says to not come back, it could just be Shawna telling him to run. Because Shawna and Javi are given a few scenes together in the first season, and he seems to trust Shawna. So that could be the explanation of that. It could just be what they showed. Or I did also think that he could have run into another one of the girls during Doom's Coming and had a conversation with her where she convinced him to run away or something, and it just hasn't been revealed to the rest of us. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like and subscribe.